We're going to talk about comprehensive exams this week. This is one of those weeks where there's nothing due, but this is something that you need to know about because it's coming up fast and you need to start preparing and thinking about your comprehensive exams. And so, comprehensive exams are also called comps. You may hear it referred to as either. And there are rules set by the university about what comps have to be, and everyone takes comps in any doctoral program. And so there's rules from the university, and then the college also has rules that are a little more strict than the university's rules. And so you need to be aware of what the university says that you have to do to pass your comps, but then also what our College of Education says. And that information can be found in the graduate catalog for the university, and then the graduate catalog for the College of Education, and then also in that doctoral handbook that we talked about in the past week. So you can go to your doctoral handbook, and starting on page 7, there's information about comps. So I wanted to kind of give you an overview because you guys can read those materials for yourself, but I did want to give you an overview of what to kind of expect for comprehensive exams. So what are comps? And this is taken from the graduate catalog of the university. So when a student is in good standing, so you have to have a 3.0 in good standing, and you've completed all basic required coursework for the doctoral degree, and you're enrolled in your last semester of coursework. Okay, so either you finished your coursework or you're enrolled in your last semester of coursework. So we're talking about this now because for a lot of you, that last semester of coursework is taking ICL 8995 in the fall. And so when you're in that last course, you're eligible to take comps. And so the majority of you will be taking comps, and perhaps all of you can take comps this fall, unless you've gotten off track for different reasons and you're extending your coursework into the spring. You'll be taking them this fall. And so you don't have to complete your last course. You have to be taking your last course. And everybody has to feel like you're going to pass that last course or your last courses, and you can take comprehensive exams. So that's exclusive of dissertation hours because you cannot take any dissertation hours without having passed comprehensive exams. So you must pass a comprehensive exam. Every doctoral student at the University of Memphis has to pass a comprehensive exam, and so before you're cleared to take dissertation hours. It has, and this says it must contain both written and oral components. Yours will have both written and oral components covering the major and collateral fields of study, and so you'll have that. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means in just a minute. And then the performance must be acceptable to the advisory committee. Not more than one dissenting vote is allowed. So on those, there's a form. There's a form for everything, right? So there's a form for your comprehensive exams, and everyone on that committee will mark whether or not you've successfully passed. And no more than one person can say no for you to move forward. So that's going to become important. So anyway, talk for a minute. You have an advisory committee. That's what you filled out that form back in IDT 8100 with Dr. Lowther for that advisory committee. And this past week, I had you guys start brainstorming your dissertation committee. Because you haven't put that together yet or had it cleared yet, your advisory committee can still issue your comp. So those people listed on your advisory committee, unless it's someone who has left the university, and then you can substitute for someone else on your advisory committee. Or if you already know your dissertation committee and you've already squared that away, it can be your dissertation committee that gives you those comps. But you will have multiple people involved with your comprehensive exams. So when do you take them? Again, if you're in good standing and you are in your last semester of coursework, that's when you would take your comprehensive exams. And so what do they consist of? They have to have both that written and oral component covering the major, so that's IDT, and collateral fields of study. And so for us, that's research. And we often collaborate with EDPR to issue that research portion. And so you have 9 hours of comprehensive exams. Now, traditionally, that meant that you came and you sat in a room for a total of 9 hours with nothing but a dumb computer. And so no internet access, just basically a word processor and no materials. and you had a total of the 9 hours, and sometimes people would do like three one morning and, you know, three in the afternoon and three the next morning, and they didn't sit in the room for 9 hours at one stretch. Um, but there's a 2 hour requirement that's a research question, and then the rest it will be IDT questions related directly to the research that you're wanting to do, and so and to make sure you have a good understanding of IDT. So the whole point of this is to say you've mastered the coursework, you're ready to, you know, to begin research in this field, and you're ready to, you know, you can do a dissertation because you have a good enough understanding of the courses that you've taken and a good enough understanding of research that we can move forward with a dissertation. And so what some people, and the majority of people do, is they decide what kind of dissertation they're going to do: quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods. If it's quantitative, they would get a quantitative question from the EDPR faculty that taught the quantitative courses. If there's a qualitative, if you're choosing a qualitative study, the same thing, you would get a qualitative question. If you're doing a mixed methods, you could do an hour of qual and an hour of quant. Notice, so this says minimum, 2 hours minimum in research. You could do, you know, 3 hours in research. That would be okay too. One thing I'm going to tell you is how you divide up that 9 hours is a negotiation between you and your advisor. And so you could have, for example, 9 questions for 1 hour each. Do not be crazy. Do not do that. I would recommend having 3 questions, one in research, whether it's quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods, whatever your study is going to be. So that would be one 3 hour question, and then 2 IDT questions, 3 hours each. That's my recommendation. That's a discussion you could have with your advisor. Again, you could have, you know, any combination of questions, but don't make this harder than it has to be. Why would you write, you know, and answer 5 questions when you could write 3 and meet the requirements? So these are the hours. Now, I mentioned that traditionally you would be in a room and you would have that amount of time. We've moved away from that in our online program, and in fact, we're the only program at the University of Memphis who have been approved to do distance comprehensive exams. All other online programs, their students still have to come to campus to take these, but we've put some extra measures in place and done some things, and we're the only program that has permission to offer comps at a distance. So that's kind of cool, but also that means we have a really big responsibility to do it right and to get it right. We have had instances in the past where people have plagiarized. They've taken that freedom to, they've taken liberties with their freedom, and they did not fare well. And so because you have a take home, in essence, comprehensive exam, what you give back is expected to be a lot more because you have access to resources and other things. Whereas if you were sitting in a room on campus, you know, with nothing but 4 blank walls and a word processor, you're capable of producing more, so we expect more. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. But anyway, so there's the written piece and the oral piece, and we'll talk about those in a little more detail in a minute. The total of what we call 9 hours, and so that's about how long it would take you to write these questions. Okay, so your written comps. You negotiate this with your chair, and then your committee, your advisory committee or dissertation committee, whatever you have finalized at that time, will write those questions for you. You can get, like I said, your EDPR, your research questions from EDPR. Someone on your advisory committee from IDT could write your research questions if they have expertise in quantitative or qualitative methodology. That's okay too. So you negotiate that, you choose who writes the questions, members of that committee, who's going to write which question. They're typically essay format. There's a problem, and you have to say how you would solve that problem. APA is an absolute requirement on these things. You cannot turn something in that isn't proofread, APA, all of that. This is an official document, and you want to put your best foot forward here. You'll have separate questions, and so it's possible that you pass 2 questions but have to rewrite one of the questions. They're counted separately. And so if you don't, if you've got the 3 questions, which is what I recommend, and you do really great on your research question and one of your IDT questions, but the other one is, questionable, you could be asked to rewrite that one question. The time frame and the setting is negotiable. As I mentioned, some people choose the traditional. They come to campus with a word processor and they sit and they do their hours. Some of you don't have that option. You live far away. And so, but typically they have to be done within a 2 week, your writtens have to be done within a 2 week time frame. So from the time you get your first question until you turn in your last is a 2 weeks. Some people like to get all 3 questions at the beginning of the 2 weeks and they turn them all 3 in at the end. Some only want to focus on one at a time, so they do one, turn it in, get their second one, and do it that way. All of those things, that's negotiable with your chair, is how you will do that. But like I said, if you have 3 questions in there take home, you'll have access to look at journal articles, to look back at textbooks, all of those things. We know that you have that access. We expect you to use those materials. Therefore, we expect your answers to be very high quality. We expect your APA to be great because you have the manual. You've got, APA websites. The one thing you cannot use is a human resource. And so you can't ask another professor here or anywhere else their opinion. You can't ask your peers in your cohort or in another cohort. You cannot talk to people, period, about this. It shows when people have done things like that, and it doesn't end well. So feel free to use the journal articles, the textbooks, and those things. Do not talk to people. So then if you successfully pass your writtens, so you turn them in, we review the written comprehensive exams, and we say, yeah, we feel pretty good about this. We have some questions. Of course, there's always questions, but we feel they can move on to orals. If we don't feel you can move on to orals, you're asked to redo the written portion. And so you'll have an opportunity with comprehensive exams to rewrite before you come in and do your oral exam. And so let's just say you've passed, you didn't have any rewrites, it's time to do oral comps. So you would come in or Skype, Hangout, but you meet with the committee who wrote your questions. And it typically lasts from 1 to 2 hours. It's a discussion format. You do not do a presentation. You don't prepare a PowerPoint. You don't come in to present. It's a discussion. And so we say, on page 3 you said this. Why did you say that? And it's not necessarily that any of your answers are wrong. We want to understand your thinking. And sometimes there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer, but why did you make the choices that you made? Can you clarify this statement? So it's a conversation. Where we're trying to make sure you really understand what it is that you wrote or why you didn't. And sometimes, you can convince us, you can build an argument and convince us, of something that we saw differently. And so it really is more like a round table. But like I said, no presentation, discussion format. We loved it for them to end it at about an hour. We will go up to 2 because we want you to succeed, right? So we're going to keep asking you questions until you tell us what we need to hear. Basically, we know it's in there, so we'll help you articulate it and get it out. So the next, what if you don't pass? You can retake comps once. And so if you don't pass, like I said, you could have an opportunity to rewrite or to come back in and redo orals. But if you fail them twice, you're dismissed from the doctoral program. Now there are other options. You could get a second master's, you could get the EDS degree. There are other things. If you fail because you plagiarize, you're just out with no other options. So don't let that be your thing. I'm not, that should not be a concern right now. But if it's just because you truly don't understand the material, and we can't allow you to go and be an independent researcher or to be called a doctor or an expert in IDT. And so you have to pass within 2 tries of comps. And so you do your writtens. You have about a month, excuse me, a couple of weeks that we read them and bring you in for orals. It typically happens really fast. We don't want to drag that process out. But if you fail, you negotiate how much time you need to rewrite, and you may get different questions or tweaks on questions. And like I said, it may just be a portion of them that you have to redo. You may not have to redo everything. But there is an opportunity to try again. What if you do pass? Congratulations, you're all but dead, or all but dissertation. And so your ABD, that's all but dissertation. So you finished everything. All you have to do now is your dissertation. This is when you begin to be considered a doctoral candidate and you're eligible to write your prospectus or your proposal. and register for dissertation hours.